Hello, hello. If you are joining us, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have a couple of minutes to wait to see if anyone else wants to get the information. We know it's during the holidays. Lots of people are doing some last minute planning on how to make sure they close out the year successfully. So we understand it's busy time. We certainly appreciate anyone who has taken the time to invest in themselves to get some education on why succession planning can be so powerful for your business. And so, probably in about 60 seconds, we will start with the information. Again, we're focusing on succession planning. This speaks to entrepreneurs and real estate owners. And maybe you feel like you don't have the space where it is applicable to you now, but you get the information. And when it becomes something that you're ready to transition to, you know the steps to do it, and you kind of understand the power to do it. Because as an entrepreneur, sometimes you get stuck. Most of us start off small, and you can continue to think for the duration of your ownership that to manage your business in the ways and the habits that you started with is how you should continue. But I like to encourage all entrepreneurs, all real estate owners, to think of their babies, their businesses, as a real entity. And just a reminder that all small businesses, all large businesses started somewhere, and usually they started as small businesses. And you can look to the Martha Stewart empire for a great example of that, because Martha Stewart was able to go from building, making really fancy baskets to having a powerhouse brand that has, circled the world, much less the nation. So even though you may have a small business now, you certainly have space and room for it to grow to something amazing. And you want to put the boots to the ground to make sure you are preparing your business for an astronomical level of success. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Today, we are focusing in on succession planning for real estate owners and entrepreneurs. This is a real spotlight on focusing your business and your legacy for things that are important to you, which is typically your family. But it may also be other people who have bought into your business. So it may be your clients. It may be making sure that your employees have a space that can continue to call their professional home. And it may just be the clients and the community that you serve. So often your business is bigger than yourself, your personal needs, and maybe even your personal vision. So this is a great way to start thinking about how to incorporate a larger vision into how you see your business. About me, I'm the managing partner here at the Curry Law Firm. Started with the MBA from FAMU, later got a JD from South Texas. And more than anything, throughout my career, I've been an entrepreneur. I've been a commercial real estate broker. I've been a a real estate investor, and I've had a variety of other businesses, probably 50 or so. So I certainly understand the challenges that entrepreneurs face as they start, build, and scale their business. Um, at the Curry Law Firm, we work in a variety of practice areas, but if you boil it down, we're a one stop legal shop for entrepreneurs and real estate owners. We do transactional work, we do litigation work, we do estate planning and copyright and trademark protection. So we do kind of everything that a business needs as they begin, as they grow, and then even things like succession planning or buy sell agreements we assist with. For me, this topic is very much close to my heart because in the course of being an entrepreneur who has been a successor from other entrepreneurs, I certainly understand what can happen when you do not properly plan. I had a grandfather who was an ophthalmologist, a mom who was an ophthalmologist, and sometimes you get so deep and so caught up in the running your business and the day-to-day operations of your business, you forget about the bigger stage and the bigger steps you need to take to ensure that your business can continue to do what you would like it to do in and out of your lifetime. So while you are mourning someone, while you're feeling sad, while you're dealing with the full onset of grief, it is very difficult to also balance that person's business. So Although your grief may stop your life, that death may cause a pause to your family and your friends. Life does not stop. Rent still needs to be paid. Taxes have to be paid. Employees certainly still want their paycheck. For your business to remain operational, vendors want to know when they can expect payment, and clients still need services. So all of these things, despite sadness, despite any understanding that people have when death does occur, or incapacitation, or you're just simply away from the business, when that occurs, people still want to know there's a plan in place. And that testing, what would happen if I wasn't here, doing that own you asking that question yourself is a great way to really understand if your business is prepared, if you had to leave, if you were unavailable, or if there was something more tragic that happened, what would anyone do? And if you're finding yourself as a business owner at a loss for understanding or explaining what would happen if you were no longer there, then you can certainly guarantee that people who are extended from the business, are not as close, or don't have your vision, or don't have your passion, or don't have your skill sets, that they would also be equally confused on the next steps for the business. So, without a plan, loved ones are left to manage sadness and chaos in very difficult times. And that is almost certainly always a bad combo. So, worst case, you're a business owner and there is no plan. So, what happens when you're the only person on the bank account, or you are listed as the manager, or you are the CEO, and now you are no longer there? Easy enough. It can easily be frozen, especially if you have a sole proprietorship, which means it's an extension of you personally. So, bank accounts freeze until the bank knows who is the proper party to allow access or to give all of the funds to. That means payroll stops. That means operation stops. If you have some contracts that require your responsibility or action on your part, that could lapse too. Quickly thereafter, if you don't pay staff, not even because they're not loyal or because they don't want to, they leave because they have their own families, they have their own personal operations that they need to make sure keep running. Clients go elsewhere, and then your family is still left in the pressure cooker trying to make things work that they may not understand, and there may not be clear instructions on what to do next. So businesses that took years, decades even to build, could crumble in weeks just because things aren't together, people don't know what to do, and in the midst of chaos, often people will do nothing. So here are the facts. This is not, we like to think rosy, and most people don't like to think about what happens if I'm not here or if I die. But there's some hard facts as to what could happen when you do become incapacitated or die. And what we know statistically is that 70% of businesses fail or close after the owner dies or becomes incapacitated. So that leaves only 12% of family businesses to survive after a second generation. And if you spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of years building something that you're proud of, and building it for the purpose of being able to take care of your family, that is very sad. The alternative to that is that, the business properly transitions. You have a willing, able, and eager buyer to take over the business or to continue to operate or to merge with. And so these failures are something that is completely avoidable. However, it takes time, it takes energy. It can't be done on the spur of the moment. You have to structure your business, your operations, and even possible mergers or possible buyers long before you actually need it. And that's a recipe for planning your own natural transition, which may be retirement, which may be selling the business and taking a second career, or taking some new hobbies, or it may just be making sure that your family continues to be provided for with what you build in your lifetime. So, in that, succession planning is a combination of risk management, of asset protection, and really thinking about what your legacy is. That may be a state of mind, that may be things that are important to you as far as how you grew up, how you grew your business, um, ways that you maintained and stayed disciplined and persevered, and leaving that to the next generation. So it's not just, hey, I grew up and my grandfather was always successful. Give them the range of emotions and the range of challenges that you face to become successful and stay successful, which is a challenge. So imagine it. Let's think about some of these worst case. The phones just stop ringing. You not even, this is a case where we're not talking about death, but you're hospitalized. It's something critical, and your time, your family's time, your energy has to be focused on your health care. So you're no longer there to tell somebody to pick up the phone, to call somebody back, to do the drafting, to do the to make the service call. So what happens? Does someone have access to your passwords? Do they have access to your accounts? Is there another authorized signer? And if not, panic will certainly hit, because what can someone do in your absence without passwords, without account access, without authorized signers? Without that, what happens to the staff? What happens to the clients? And 60 days later, when you're all better, what is the status of your business? Are you now building from scratch because all of your existing clients and contracts have left? This can be a very real consequence of not planning, and a lifetime of work can go down the hill in 60 days. Unfortunately, we never know when we will need it, when we'll have a health crisis, or when we'll be, when we pass. And having some certainty and some assurances for our business, for our clients, for our staff, for our family is a really powerful part that you can do in succession planning. In that, it's a roadmap for business continuity, making sure there's someone to take your place, who knows what to do, who can continue to service and provide the service or the products that your business provides. That there's transfer in leadership, that everyone doesn't just say, hey, the main mover and shaker in this business is gone. So essentially, what is the value left? Because often, as entrepreneurs, we don't realize that the value is us and what we're doing, the long nights, the early mornings, the trying to do everything from the rooter to the tutor can have some detrimental impact, because no one else knows how to do what you know how to do. How to make sure you properly transfer ownership. That may just be, I want to give it to my kids, and making sure you put the protocols in place so that ownership transfer happens easily. How can you make sure that the income you have, someone know how to file your taxes? Does someone, if there's a large bill or a large contract due, does someone have explicit instructions on how to continue that? And what does your family need if you're not available? Do they need the mortgage paid off? Do they have, bills on a monthly basis that can be satisfied with what is accessible to them, especially if you have to go through the probate process, or there is some long-term delay in moving assets to something that's accessible to them. And then, of course, your long-term legacy. If that's, work hard or invest in real estate or take a chance on yourself and become an entrepreneur, how have you communicated that legacy to the people that are important to you in your life? So, needing a succession plan. If someone, how do you know if you need one? Well, it really depends on your business, of course, your clients, your tenants, your community. But I would say almost everyone needs a plan. So, if you, let's say you don't consider yourself a business owner, but you own several properties, who's paying the property taxes? Who's collecting rent? Who is evicting tenants if they are no longer paying? All of those things become really important. In family businesses, often your kids or your heirs have some piecemeal information, but if they have not fully stepped into operations, what they know may not be enough to keep the business moving and to keep the business moving successfully. And we'll talk more specifically about professionals and PLLCs, because that can be an even more specific way to get that geared up. So, if we're talking about PLLCs, these are professional limited liability companies. And the way you get that designation is that you start a business that has a professional recognized by the state. That could be a doctor, that could be a lawyer, or some other licensed or qualified professional. And if you have that, often the only person that can step in for subsequent running that business is another professional. So that may be another person who has a that same degree. So as a lawyer with my PLLC, the only person who can run the law firm is another lawyer. It's not my family. It's not a friend. It's not maybe someone I could trust, or even a third party fiduciary. So when you think about that, There are additional requirements because of that professional nature. For doctors, that may be having a licensed physician step in. There are lots of requirements for HIPAA compliant patient transfer, and also the ability for your patients to access their information for an extended period of time, even beyond the end of your business or the end of your life. And so having that set up can be an important part of making sure that your family continues to get um, income if you intend it to be so from your business, but also that there's not some statutory or requirements that your business close because there's no one to guide the business any further. So, doctors, lawyers, even things like architects, making sure if you've registered your business as a PLC that you have continued on and made a plan for how someone can step in as your successor is very important. Lawyers, of course, you want to have a case you want to have a way to process and transfer open cases, and even things like transferring your IOTA account or any account that you have for the benefit of your clients for services not yet received. You have to have a plan for that. So, essentially, with the PLC, you want to make sure that your business can remain compliant, as well as putting a plan in place to get a subsequent successor and ultimately either wind down, transfer, sell the practice. So, there's still some underlying benefit to your business. There's nothing sadder to me, especially as a granddaughter and a daughter of doctors, to just have something that was active and servicing the community and really a part of your passion, just have to wind down without any long-term benefits to your family, because there's not a plan in place on who can next run it and how that can happen smoothly, without interruption, and without the loss of clients or patients. So let's talk about what happens in Texas when you don't have a plan. Well, the rules are the state will decide for you. So if you don't have a succession plan in place, if you don't have a will or trust in place, and you, in the event of your death, your estate has to be probated. And if you own a business, that business has to be probated too. So you're going to submit either a will or a application for administration without a will, and that could mean they're going to make sure that they validate all of your heirs. They're going to put public notice as to any of your debtors that there has been a probate open for you. This process certainly can take at least 6 months, but often much longer, especially with the more assets you have. So the more complicated that the probate is, the longer it will take, because you have to put people in place that know how to run a business. There has to be valuation of the business. If it's a sale, you may have to have court approval of that sale. And all of that time, all of that compliance means that assets could easily freeze, including real estate. If you haven't set up a plan to pay your property taxes or pay insurance, disasters can certainly strike. And then you have the very real risk of business decline, which becomes higher and higher as time goes on. So the more time that passes without someone in place, the more likely you are that there will be no plan. There'll be nothing else that you can do. And you have to understand and have a plan in place for someone else to understand how all of that will be handled. Because if not, the state deals very much more in money as opposed to property. So if they don't know what to do with your business, they're going to say, value the business, sell the business, and move on, because they don't know or want to micromanage how to run your business. And then if it runs into the ground, it sets up a whole nother course of default or complaints that your family could raise because things happen improperly. So if you're thinking about succession planning, but you don't want to lose any value, there's a couple of easy things you can ask yourself and do a quick checklist of what's going to happen. Who else is authorized to touch money in your accounts? If you're a sole proprietor like me, it may be no one. That could be a big issue if you're unavailable. Who processes your payroll? How do they access things? Is it a third party that automatically knows how to process it? Are you the person who personally sends timesheets and who personally does it? That is another big risk for continued continuing your business if you're unavailable. If you are the person who does the talking to the clients, if you're the face of the business, how will clients feel if you are temporarily or permanently unavailable? Do they feel confident that the remaining members of your team or your staff can do what you did, that their case will be continued, that their build of their home will still continue? So if they don't have that confidence, they will go to find someone they can have that confidence in. And that may feel like that's disloyal, but that's just a part of business, and people still need progress to continue. So you have the uncertainty in staff, the likelihood that your unavailability causes some breaches in contracts that you already have built out. And then, of course, the loss of continuity, because if you pick up, if you have a business running strong and everything falls down for 2 months and you pick it back up, then what's left? Probably chaos and maybe not much else, right? There may not be much left if you are just unavailable to do the things you need to for your business. So a great note, businesses rarely fail from lack of talent. They fail from lack of structure, and making sure you have those systems in place and the structure to answer these questions right here. If I'm not available, who can do this? And if for many of these questions, when you ask yourself, you don't have an answer, that is a concern. Best case. Even if you're thinking, I don't want to think about dying, I don't want to think about death, I do not like thinking about worst case scenarios. Heck, I'm an entrepreneur. I obviously have some level of risk acceptance. And so I'm not betting on that. But let's just say, best case scenario, you're thinking, how do I want to retire? How do I want to live my life? And what's the next step for me? I have 10 good working years in me. And after that, I want to retire, move to the south of France, or live on a cruise ship. Whatever your plans are in your business, some of what you do in your succession plan is really thinking about, how am I increasing the sellability of my own business for my own benefit? So if your family is not motivation enough, think about yourself. How are you running your business, and thinking about your succession plan? That may be to sell the business for $5 million. That may be to empower your kids or your family to take over the business. That may be to sell the business to your employees in a structured buyout. Whatever it is, succession planning really starts at its best in that best case scenario, thinking about how to make sure operations can continue, understanding your staff and their roles, and making sure they don't need your daily instruction to continue to do what they do best and maybe even better than you. Making sure your books and financials are easy to read, or transparent, and that transition paths are clearly marked. If you say, I have another 5 years where I can work this hard, and in 5 years I want to step back, and then another 5 years I'm taking another step back, having that plan in place behooves you. And so your succession plan is a part of that. But when you do it well, it is not a worst case example. It is, no one can do things in perpetuity. And you are planning for the next step of how your business baby continues to run, with an intentional handoff, as opposed to disaster striking and everyone's just having to move in reaction to that disaster. So the point is, you don't want to just survive, you can sell. People buy all sorts of businesses for all sorts of reasons. And even if you're not ready today, getting your business prepared for a business broker to review it, for someone to come in and say, wow, I can't imagine building this from scratch, but I don't have a desire to, but I do have $10 million, because I want to get something that has cash flowing in, that's operational, that I can scale for my own interests. So don't forget that the end of your business, the end of your interest in your business, does not have to be the end of your business. If you're building something, if it has a value to it, someone certainly could be interested in buying that business for that value. And before, it used to be mom and pop shops or someone else in a similar circumstance, but now even big businesses are getting into buying smaller businesses because they recognize the value. For a real estate owner, what happens when you don't have a plan in place? Okay, very easily, if there's no one collecting rent, then people won't just run and fight to pay it, right? So are the tenants getting the access they need? Are they living in livable homes? Maybe things happen as a real estate owner. Um, water um, water mains break, the gas stops working. If the tenants can't get repaired, another reason they stop paying, they move out, and now you have all these defaults, right? Defaults in your income means defaults in your accounts payable, including mortgages. So, one of the saddest things that I've seen, and one of the things that certainly motivated me to get more from real estate into estate planning, is seeing how many homes are lost in tax foreclosures because during the transition, during the probate process, no one from the family had the funds to pay or was willing to pay a loan when they had siblings or their interest would be split. So I may be an heir and I have the funds to pay the property taxes, but I'm only a 1/6 heir. I don't feel like fronting the other five portions of property taxes from everyone. So instead of it, I'm just going to let it slip away. And so that happens a lot. And it's a very sad reality when it comes to what happens in real estate. So maybe you just have one investment property that still qualifies, and you still need a plan in place because these lapses can have big consequences for real property. At the core of a good succession plan, one, your entity documents are all up to date. People know who's the owner, and your operating agreements actually has instructions on how the next person can step into the role. Are they have full ownership rights? They just have rights to income from the property. Making sure that's set up properly. You may have a trusted legal Zoom to do the formation. You may have done the formation yourself, but the question after that becomes making sure for the business that you have now and in the future, if you've properly prepared for it. Having buy sell agreements, understanding who a buyer would be for your business, and having a resource set where you can access them if needed. I don't want to operate this business anymore. Or your wife or your spouse or your kids say, we have this business is valuable, but we don't know who to connect it to who might be a potential buyer. Successor managers. You only know what you know, and your family may love you and they may adore you and they may want what's best for you. But if they do not have similar experience, they may not be the best person to be the successor manager. And making sure there's a succession manager in place in ways that they can feel not just empowered, but compensated for their additional work. Key man insurance is a great way to cover that in between, to say, I'm not sure what can happen with my business, but I want to make sure we can pay the bills, we can satisfy our payroll, we can handle our responsibilities, and making sure that there's insurance in case the worst happens for the business, not for you personally, is a great way to do it. I can't say this enough, but making sure you have processes, systemized operations, and manuals. You want to do, if you remember the book, the series of books for dummies, just running your business for dummies and making sure that someone, if necessary, could easily understand all the things that may be locked into your mind as an entrepreneur. Having clean books and a financial structure, making sure somebody can reference the progress and the prowess of the business from tax returns are an important way that someone can easily value the business and potentially purchase it. And then making sure that your title is aligned. Sometimes as real estate investors, you start piecemeal developing a portfolio. So some things are in your name, some things are in your husband or your spouse's name, some things are in your LLC names, and there's no clear rhyme or reason or pattern to things. So making sure that is laid out so that it's easily understandable for potentially the successor of that business. Other real estate considerations, making sure property managers have authority for things like signing a new lease, evicting someone who's not paying, making sure they have the right to have a conversation with the mortgage. If you were a key person or you were a guarantor and now you're not available, so that causes a lapse or in your contract, how are you going to handle that so that the mortgage payments can continue to flow? If there's repairs or maintenance, often when someone dies, if they're a real estate holder, the properties can easily become dilapidated. Somebody moves, it rains, and now a property that was viable at month 1 is unlivable in month 12. Making sure that doesn't happen. And never, ever, ever relying on probate. The process is slow, it could be convoluted, it could be very costly, and without a plan in place, the only thing the court may say is liquidating. Even if, how the real estate works is it is the worst time in the world to sell property. If you waited a year, you could get twice as much. The court may not see it that way, right? And they may just say, we don't want to leave it dormant. We don't want to leave it vacant. We're going to sell it. And in that sense, there's a loss to the estate because you haven't optimized the timing for the sale of the properties. So trust as a tool in your succession toolbox is a good way to, one, avoid probate. Make sure that the courts are not the person deciding what happens next, but that you have left a plan on what happens next. It allows someone to instantly take control of the business and to begin to operate it. That's different than the probate process that requires applications, that requires public notice, that has a fee if you're going to have an attorney involved. It allows someone to instantly be able to do what you did in your business. Of course, you have the private administration. Sometimes you don't want everyone to know that things are amiss or there's this transition of power. So when you're able to keep it privately, as opposed to probate, which is very much public, all of probate filings can go and be read by anyone if you have access to the county that you're in. Cash flow protection, again, that's the lifeblood of your business. That's the breath in and out. Money comes in, money goes out, and making sure you have a smooth transition of that and continuation of operations is important. And most importantly, heirs can disagree, and stress from death will impact everyone differently. So making sure that you have a plan in place so that you're the source, your business, your assets are not the source of division amongst your heirs is an important part of preventing chaos and allowing you, even from the grave, to remain in control. So, the succession timeline, again, some of it is about worst case scenario, death, but a lot of it is just I'm unavailable. If there's a gap in being able to be connected to my business, what happens? That's short term emergency. I'm not available on the weekend. My phone went out. My phone died. Can my business survive? Can my staff or my clients survive that gap in my presence? And then you go a little bit longer, right? Step one, 3 days, they can cover. You go a little bit longer, 1 to 3 years, who can cover it? And how do they know what to do? So that involves strategy planning and processes, right? So someone could come and pick up, she left off on page 5, I'm picking up on page 6. How do I move forward? Succession planning is not just one big thing you do for your business. It is a mindset to how your business continues with and without you. And so some of that will start in leadership development, making sure there are good people in place who understand your vision, who understand the requirements, and who can continue on. And then making sure that whatever assets or wealth you've accumulated from that business, the plan for transition for that is clearly set out. So when you plan it well, your business is durable, valuable, scalable, sellable, and transferable. So you've put things in place that allow for the value to be recognized and for it to be moved, maybe down to your kids, maybe to your staff, and maybe just to a third party who is interested in the hard work, the effort, the attention, the clients, the income you've been able to drive for your business. With that, your family becomes prepared, protected, supported, and stable. Death is hard enough. The uncertainty that comes with probate, or what happens to the business, or how can I sell it, or who's a viable buyer, who's going to pay the staff, or who's going to pay the rent. Those are questions of chaos. And having a good plan on how to answer that gives you that result. The legacy of we built something that was built to last, and your family is protected and supported through the process of transition. So last but not least, we talked about some of the things that could happen. Best case, succession plan, and you're off on your yacht in your swimsuit, drinking a margarita. Or worst case, hey, the business completely crumbles and your family is left with nothing but pain and stress. But let's talk about a business that survived, that some unexpected illness came, but the business was able to operate. And in the time that the owner took the illness, they took the time to get better, to focus on their health and their wellness. And then there you go. The business continues. They come back more committed than ever to continue to service your clients, to continue to be a resource for the staff, and to continue to have a business that's viable, which means you're not there, but it could continue to not just survive, but also thrive. And then businesses sold. People buy businesses all the time. I've seen people pay $250,000 for a business just because it already had a Medicaid number, right? So for lots of reasons, people are interested in buying your business. You have to take the step out there. You have to put the business out there, give it to a business broker, see what they say. Hey, people love this about your business, or they hate it and they don't want to buy it, because that still gives you time to correct or optimize whatever you're doing so that you could get the highest value possible for what you're putting your time, your energy, your sweat equity into. That is the power of planning. So at the end of the day, we help with a lot of the things that come up when you're thinking about succession plan, because we always, and we encourage staff, the staff encourages you to be as offensive as possible. You're not always playing defense. You're not always um, reacting to the next disaster. You're planning intentionally. Disaster happens, death happens, transition happens, but you can plan around it. And certainly at the Curry Law Firm, we hope to be partners with you as you do plan around it. So if you want to reach out to us, you can always go to planwithtrust.com. Reach out to us, 713-574-2070. We're happy to get you scheduled for a consultation. Or reach out to us at info@theclfirm.com. We're happy to help. We're happy to answer questions. We're happy to provide education, because we want to see business successful, and we want to see them going generation to generation, not just ending or collapsing unnecessarily. So thank you so much for your time. We will have questions that you can either email us or put in the chat. But without any questions, we look forward to talking with you about any matter, business, real estate, probate, trust planning related. You can simply reach out to the Curry Law Firm. We are always happy to help.